Round 3 and the championship moves to Europe's most westerly outpost, Portugal. Based near Porto, Rally Portugal's well known for its dry, dusty roads, big crowds and even bigger jumps. But not this year. Torrential rain through the winter had left the stages resembling a mud bath. This was Tommy Mackinnon's 100th start in a World Rally, and he hoped that running first on the road would be an advantage, as the stages would be less cut up. Baltar, just east of Oporto, in the first stage of the rally, a 3-kilometre head-to-head super special in the mud. More rain fell overnight and the stages were in a worse state than ever before. Peugeot opted for a mud tyre, but Tommy Mackinnon had to make do with a gravel tyre. The lottery had begun. Viso was as much a fight for sight as for speed. Second on the road was Harry Rovanperä. The early cars were always going to have the cleanest run through the stages, and Rovanperä set the fastest times, moving him into the lead. Full of confidence from victory in Sweden, the Finn gave the rain-soaked spectators something to cheer about on the famous Faf jump. The record over the jump is the length of a football pitch. But Burns was a little more conservative.
Fast right, minus in bump, slippy maybe.
If the biblical conditions weren't bad enough, Grunholm had to cope with cows as well. The Finn was also having problems seeing in the mist. On tyres cut deep to add traction, Tommy Mackinnon ploughed his way through the mud. No longer was being first on the road an advantage. Rovanperä was faring little better. He was almost bottoming out in the ruts. Not even his mud tyres could get to grips with the appalling mire. With his engine overheating, Rovanperä was forced to fill the radiator from a stream. The worry now that long-term damage might have been done. But at the top it was coming down to a head-to-head between Mackinnon and Sainz. Colin McRae's season went from bad to worse when his Focus caught fire.
What's all this coming out? Fire. Fire extinguisher? Yeah.
Peering through the mist, Mackinnon pushed as hard as he dared. On the harder stages south of Oporto on day 2, there was little advantage to running first on the road. This was the Arganil stage, and Mackinnon floundered in the mud bath, but still set fastest time. Sainz was in even worse shape, almost coming to a complete stop. But in the fog at the top of the hill, a safety car had slid off and was stranded half on and half off the road. How Sainz missed it is a miracle. The stage looked like the Somme, but by now the weather was not Harry Rovanperä's worry. His engine had dropped a cylinder and the Peugeot was dying a slow death.
7. Vasen helppo miinus pidä, jatkaa pitkä oikein eri plus maali. 7.
The 206 finally giving up the ghost on the road section.
Harry, after such a great result in Sweden, a big disappointment for you.
Yes, absolutely. And rally starting well yesterday and today morning also everything looks well, but something's engine problem coming and we don't know yet what is that, but rally is over.
The battle for the lead raged on. Tommy Mäkinen looking strong. And still ahead of Carlos Sainz. Grönholm hates fog and mist. With bad eyesight, he has trouble making out shapes, and it's a major fight just to keep going. Grönholm's other battle was with Richard Burns, but the Englishman was fighting steering and gearbox problems when he overshot a bend on stage 18, virtually handing third place to Grönholm.
You're just 13 seconds ahead. Do you think that's going to be enough?
Of course, I have to try to push hard and try to do my best and no mistakes, whatever. I think it should be.
At the start of the final day, the tension was tangible. Sainz failing to get a good morning from Mäkinen. Rocks flying and rubber burning, Mäkinen showed Sainz a muddy set of heels as he launched off the line. It's always harder defending the lead than fighting to take it, and Mäkinen knew it. 2 minutes later, Sainz pulled onto the launch pad. In an instant, it was clear that Sainz was on a mission to beat Mäkinen. Cutting corners to save time sent the crowd wild. Sainz was now 0.3 of a second ahead of Mäkinen with one stage left. Inspired by the moment, third place Grönholm too blasted onto the penultimate stage, ending up 0.3 of a second faster than Burns. The rivalry was in the service area as much as on the stage. In Sweden, he'd thrown away his lead on the last stage. This time, Mäkinen couldn't afford to throw away another 10 points. Sainz and Lewis Moyer didn't put a foot wrong. But Mäkinen cut the corners so much that he'd flung boulders into the path of the Ford. And in his desperation, Sainz had slid wide. Time was running out. Mäkinen crossed the line, not knowing if he'd done enough to win.
Ei me sit pystytä mitään. No en tiedä miten meni, mutta yritin. Hyvin tuli.
But Sainz risked everything. It would be better to crash in search of 10 points than slow down for 6. But when Sainz's time came through, it was not enough. Mäkinen was the winner.
Last 3 years I haven't got any result here. Very bad performance, very bad results, and finally we got the lead from the start, and we were leading most of the time.
Really taking high risk in first stage. We managed to come back to Tommy, and we continue in the last stage. Maybe pushing a little bit too hard at the beginning, coming wide a couple of times, and then Tommy was really cutting every single van and putting huge stones on the road.
So 8.6 seconds, the final gap from Mäkinen to Carlos Sainz. Grönholm takes third from Burns by half a minute, Delacour fifth, and Alistair McRae sixth. Mäkinen's now 4 points clear in the drivers' table from Sainz.